Jennifer, thank you so much for having us today.
Thank you
I
for
wanted to talk to you a little bit about what you have going on at your spa here.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
Why don't we start with, so people that don't know, because everybody always sees that you're here, but maybe they don't know who Jennifer is and how she got started, right? So what led you down this path?
Well, what led me down this path was my own story. So,
Okay.
I had my own battle with acne and how that affected my self-confidence. And so that was the first leg in my journey and my first step. So I went to aesthetic school about 20 years ago, and then that just kind of led me down the pathway of finding nursing and digging into why I had acne and figuring out that that was gut health and a hormonal imbalance. And so all these little things left clues on how things work together. And I think that's what really I want people to know about how our spa is different.
Okay.
We take an inside out approach and we do things that leave you with ROI. So we're digging in to figure out what you have going on and why, and then how we can do it for longevity.
Okay. So you're a total mind, body, and spirit approach to aesthetics.
Yes.
Is that the right word?
Yes, because if we think about it, aging is inflammation. So if we're inflamed systemically, whether that be from our thought pattern, or it be from gut dysbiosis, or it be from whatever extreme stress, that's going to accelerate aging. We have things from the outside and things from the inside that accelerate it. Genetics does play a role, but you can always alter that and change that. You have the ability to really reconstruct how your genetics express themselves.
Okay.
So you have epigenetic modifications, and then you have genes, and you can turn them off and turn them on depending on how you want to do that. So we were talking about our morning rituals. Cold plunging is a great way to help your mind, body, and spirit, but it also wakes up senescent or sleeping cells. So that's really going to help with anti-aging. So I really like to get labs on people and figure out, okay, why do you have the hyperpigmentation that you have? Why do you have the acne that you have? Not only wanting to make you look good on the outside, but also making sure that I do my due diligence as a medical provider to really heal the body from the inside out, getting to the root cause of what's going on. And that's why we added an extra leg to our practice. So we have the aesthetic leg, but we also have the medicine leg.
Okay.
And that's because everything is connected. And I think that we kind of forget about that here in American civilization.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because America is completely a reactive instead of a preventative state.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And so you're talking about lining things up because if you feel good, you look good by proxy.
Right.
Yeah. So we have that inner glow and the outer glow.
Correct.
And that's what you help with here.
Yes, and I also want to give patients some security in knowing that what we do use on them is actually going to have a benefit that carries on. So for example, like we use dermal fillers, but the dermal fillers that we use rebuild and regenerate their own tissue.
Okay.
They're also a little bit less inflammatory, so they're safer for your body more holistically from that standpoint. So I want to be able to be a voice of reason and to be a place that people trust, to know that what we're using is intentionally made for them and it's not going to cause harm later on.
Yeah. So your first meeting, it sounds like it was probably a discovery meeting.
Yes.
Right? So you're not just going in, just so people that are watching and listening understand, you're not going into a place when you walk in here that's going to be like, here's your acne cream.
Correct.
Or here's let's go do your brows or whatever else. You're coming in here, and before you do anything with them, you're finding out who that person is.
Right.
And how you can help them wholly.
Right.
And holistically.
Right. Because I think it gets lost that we are medical providers and we take an oath to do no harm, but we're also the best practice is minimal invasive treatment to maximum patient outcome. So how can we do a head to toe assessment? You brought up brows. If someone has thin brows, do they have a thyroid issue going on? So we're really yielding the best results for that patient. And we can work with any budget, with any lifestyle, with anything, but we are going to make it a very comprehensive plan and then start to go with what the patient goal and what is needed for the patient to have the best outcome.
I never thought of that until you said that, but that probably, to someone like yourself who is educated in that field, could be a telltale sign of like the way hair growth in general, right? I mean, that has a lot to do with our hormones because T count and all that stuff's a big deal nowadays, right? Like I never ever remembered hearing that growing up.
It's true. But it's funny, I was talking about this morning with another client. Things have changed since we were growing up.
Sure.
Food has changed. The things that we're exposed to has changed, and it's only going to get harder. And so that's where I feel like people who might be getting services done now in regards to neurotoxins and dermal fillers, they need to think about the long game, because eventually you could start to develop a reaction, a foreign body reaction, a reaction to these things, and then you're kind of stuck and you don't know what to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like the mindset of smokers.
Yeah.
right? Like when I was growing up, I'll lump us together again. With that time period, you could smoke everywhere, and everybody smoked.
Right.
It's so rare to like. It's almost kind of like off-putting when I see somebody smoking a cigarette now. I'm like, really? That's
Like,
weird.
do you know how bad that is for you?
It's weird that people still do that.
Right. It is.
So yeah, like you said, food. I mean, or just having children. So like I have a 20-year-old and a 9-year-old, and the way they're developing versus then, and like I always forget that my oldest is like a grown up now, but he was like jacked when he was in high school, to the point where I don't remember anybody of my friends being in that kind of shape.
Right.
But it was because he was constantly doing performance enhancing workouts and developments, not eating incorrectly. He was eating soundly, but he was doing cryotherapy and he was doing chiropractic and he was doing all this stuff from an early age because he was training so hard. So he's like an Olympic athlete.
Well, that's awesome, and that says a lot about how you raised them, though, too. Because even the little bit that we were sharing earlier before we started filming, it's like there's a mindset that it's all cumulative. And if you have a goal, it's like every little action that you take is going, like they say, small hinges swing big doors. So it's really important to take that into consideration, which is why nutrition is at the base of everything that we do within this practice, because it starts with your gut. It starts with what you're eating. It starts with micronutrient deficiencies. You know, if some acne-prone patients have a zinc deficiency, there's all of it leads to this special symphony that you have. Like your own music is different than mine, and so it's like, how do we figure out how to make that work?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because I didn't understand any of that, and so kind of an inside track that I don't think I've talked about in any shows yet. And this will probably be something you'd speak to. I had severe abdominal pains from like 19-ish until 30, 31, and we couldn't figure it out. And every time I went to the hospital, they were cutting me open for something different. I mean, I had a biopsy on my lymph nodes. I had umbilical hernia repaired. I don't have my gallbladder or my appendix.
Oh, man.
Just everything vestigial has been ripped, and I was still having these pains. And so finally, a buddy of mine at my church was like, "What's your diet?" And I was like, "I eat pretty clean." He's like, "Yeah, but what is it?" I'm like, pretty much just milk and meat. At the time, I was drinking so much more milk. I don't know that I ever drank water. I mean, I would go through 6 gallons of milk a week.
That's a lot.
And then just eating like meat. So he's like, "You're not a baby lion, so that's probably why your gut's not aligned." And so I've cut out drinking milk, and I still do, like, I'll have yogurt or cottage cheese, but
no, you're right.
it changed my whole ability to function.
And it's crazy, and sometimes we don't realize that we felt so bad until we feel good. Because I went through the same thing, like a lot of gut issues growing up. Part of it, I think, was psychosocial and like, or psychosomatic rather, where it was trapped trauma because the body keeps a score of what's going on.
It manifests pain within you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when we have a nerve that runs through the center of our body, it's called the vagus nerve. And when we've been under extreme stress or we have nervous system dysfunction, that will start to downregulate, and that controls a lot of what we deal with as far as gut and digestion and all that. So there needs to be like a multifaceted approach. Like, yes, what is the diet? What do we have going on mentally, emotionally?
Stress-wise, yeah.
And then how are we going to recalibrate and regulate the nervous system? Because think about it, you know, when we're stressed, we're tightening our jaws. So like I have women that come in, and it's more prone for women for whatever reason, but they have a lot of aging in their lower face. I'm like, what's your dentition like? And they're like, no one's ever asked me that. I'm like, because what's going on the inside, and that's just a small example, is going to affect the outside, no matter what we do with that.
Yeah. I can relate to some of that too on the just not knowing. The part about not knowing.
Oh, yeah.
And not putting them together. Because recently I started a journey, I say recently within the last year, about just healing some of my childhood traumas. My daily functionality and my ability to like just be happier in general because I'm no longer, I should say there's a difference between when you talk about alignment. There's a difference between understanding your traumas and being self-aware and then growing out of still using them for a crutch and an excuse.
Absolutely.
Like I was able to identify them for years. This is why I act this way.
Yeah.
Rather than saying, I no longer need to act this way because I forgive that portion and move on. And so are you guys taking, when you say holistic approach, you guys are talking about all that stuff and like what's going on in your life?
So in 2025, we have some new people that are starting, that have started, like our massage therapist, she does energy work, stuff like that. Our chiropractor also does that. There are newer additions to the team. Our collaborative physician is more functional in the way that she targets things. We just really try to bring in the best of the best to have a collaborative team for whatever that person may need.
Okay.
And think about it. Let me ask you, when you started to take ownership and start to develop your own habits that you have now, can you correlate that to how you feel outwardly? Do you feel like you look better, more rested, all of that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, my sleep is still something I'm trying to get under control. It's just, there's always stuff going on in my brain. But overall, absolutely. I mean, just the little things that you don't notice, like you said. One of my sayings that I like to do is use is calm seas don't make good sailors. My grandfather always used to say that, right?
Yeah.
And so, again, like you stated, I didn't know how good I could feel until I started feeling that way. And then I was like, man, I didn't realize that I was living in misery for like 38 years of my life.
And don't you think, like, I think we have this misconception that, there's a destination, and I don't think there is a destination. I think that it's self-discovery, it's evolution, it's evolving. I didn't know all these things that I'm telling you now until I went through my own journey.
Yeah.
And you asked me how I started with a why, but now that's even more so developed. Like, Jamie and I were going to try to have a child after I got done with grad school, and I stopped ovulating. And it's like, that then led me to figuring out, okay, well, why? I didn't want to just do IVF or figure that out, nothing against that, but I knew there was something innately inside of me that knew if I figured this out, then not only will I heal myself, I'll help other people. And so I think our whole purpose on this earth is to use our own individual stories, our own individual gifts to then help us help other people. We're all here to serve a purpose and fill a little hole in everybody's life. And that's what it's all about. And so, maybe one day I'll have a different look or whatever, but that's okay. That's
Absolutely.
Evolution,
Yeah. No, I fully agree. We've adapted the mindset within the family that, and I say the family, my two sons and I, that I talk about how you say the journey. Mm-hmm. I always was looking for that destination too. I always thought about, like, what's my end point? Is this my career I'm going to retire from? Blah, blah, blah. But I have the realization now, and again, 7 years I may feel different, but I have the realization now that it is the journey because to me it's like a river. Mm-hmm. And at the end of it is the next plane.
Yeah.
It's the waterfall.
Yeah.
And so my mindset that I try and live by now is that I have to constantly steer my canoe. Mm-hmm. I can go to the left bank, I can go to the right bank, I can stay centered. There's going to be times where I need to pull over, set up camp, and recharge. Mm-hmm. But the one thing I no longer try and do is estimate how much longer the river is or fight the current.
Yeah.
So I pray to God, but I also am a big believer in working with the universe.
Yeah.
And how those things go. So the river is, to me, in my mind, the universe, and the propellant and the flow of the river is God's will.
Absolutely.
I stay on that, and I just do my due diligence every day and see where it takes me, because that's the excitement of it. Is I used to be like, what's my end point, or like a weight goal, right? Like, I want to get down to this, or I want to have 6-pack abs, or whatever else it is.
Yeah.
And in actuality, it's like, now I have the mentality of, I'm doing things consistently every day. I'm so excited to see how I feel in 400 days of doing the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm no longer concerned with certain points and goals.
Well, and I think that's it. Like, I think when that's the approach I try to take with every patient too, because, a lot of people have the mindset of like, okay, I'll be happy when, like, I have somebody come in and they feel like they have wrinkles, or I'll be happy when these wrinkles go away. Yeah. Will you though, or is that just filling it? But we can definitely help you get there. And I do believe that you have to, as a provider, make sure that you're hitting the mark when you have a patient so they can start to see progress, but then it's like, okay, how can we unravel and how can we really improve and make sure that we're doing stuff that's actually going to yield the best result overall, while also filling up their cup, making sure that if they have body dysmorphia, whatever hindrances they have up against them, because sometimes we use things from an outside to try to fill up what's going on inside, and there needs to be a balance there.
Yeah, I think it's the difference of diets and fads, which is most people's fix, but there's an end point to those, and there's a goal to those that may or may not ever be obtained, versus let me live differently, and then I won't be so concerned with these other goals. Yeah,
like, it's a marathon, not a race, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's just, and then you tend to figure something out and life throws you a curveball, or even with some of my patients, I'll figure out someone's physiology and then their physiology changes, and that's what makes medicine really fun and interesting and frustrating at times, but that's when you dig in and you really learn something, and I think that's, long story short, how I got here.
Excellent. I think it was a fun way to talk about it.
Very off the beaten path.
Yeah. So now that you're here, what all services do you provide within this? So do we call it a clinic?
Yeah, I would say practice,
or
a clinic.
Spa.
Yeah, wellness clinic. So we have our spa, which is a full medical spa. So we do all injectables. The focal point is definitely more so on the regeneration side. So we try to do things that are going to pack an ROI, so you get the immediate result and then you start to get a longer lasting result. But we do neurotoxins, we do dermal fillers, we do PDO threads, all from an injection side. Then from a skin health and whole approach, we do radiofrequency microneedling, we do all therapy, which uses ultrasound, we do facials, we do cryo hair restoration, which doesn't have to be with needles, but you can do PRP with it. So we do PRP, we do PRF for a biofiller. So if you wanted to have volume, but you didn't want to use something artificial, we can take your own blood, warm it up, thicken it up. We do chiropractic services, massage services, permanent makeup. We do a lot. And then from a medicine perspective, we do hormone replacement therapy, peptide therapy, pretty much the whole gamut from a functional standpoint.
Okay. And are some of these things that need follow-ups, once the initial consultation's been done, is there telemed to continue this where they can just order, or do they have to come in constantly?
So from a medicine perspective, yes. And I'm actually licensed in a few other states, Massachusetts and Florida. And so I do have patients nationally. Okay. But yes, telehealth is a way to go. And then we call labs in to LabCorp or Quest or wherever we need to do that. We also use some functional medicine testing like Genova and Dutch testing to dig in if there's something that's not showing up. But then, yeah, it's like after your initial, it might be 90 days, 60 days, and then eventually it'd be like 6 months to a year.
Okay.
In regards to aesthetics, we like to do at minimum 12-week plans. It doesn't mean that that's what it has to be, but we like to take things slow, really learn people's anatomy and their own physiology, and make it very intentional for them.
So you're not just diving into something that may be detrimental to them.
Right.
And is that part of what you mean when you say, because the way I understand our ROI as a marketer is far different than I believe the way you're using it, right? Because ROI to me is just literally return on investment.
No, it is, yeah.
So is this a time and monetary investment that you speak about with the return on investment?
Yeah, so like for example, if you came into me and you really wanted to have collagen stimulation, we could do, and you had volume loss, we could do regenerative fillers to help with that, and then do something on top of it to compound more collagen. So like radius and all therapy go really well together, and you're going to yield. They actually have histology slides where they've done dissected tissue, and you can actually see a difference in using those two together. It's like aerating your lawn and using collagen for fertilizer for collagen, and together they're going to yield a better result.
Okay. So when you say aerate, you're talking about opening the pores?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Microneedlings like that, yeah.
Right. Just tiny people walking around with little spiky shoes on your face? Okay, great. So, and then what else, where could they find you? And because I think rather than starting about the beginning process, because I believe you already touched on that, where can they find you? What point in a person's life should they begin these things? Because I think there's a misconception there too, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to be in your 50s before you begin anti-aging. We can start in our 20s,
I would
30s?
say so, yes. And I think, so you said it perfectly earlier, starting ahead of the game and not just going after the symptom or being reactive. Let's be proactive. Let's start younger. That's going to yield the best results over time. And everything is customized and catered to what that individual needs. So it might just be facials every month. It might just be neurotoxin every 3 months. It might just be small, or we can make it big. It depends on what they need and what their budget is and what their commitment is. As far as where they can find us, we have our website, which I'm sure you can link. It's precisionlife.io. We have our socials. If we try to make them fun and educational, so you get a feel of what our office is like. But yeah, that's basically it.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so very much for joining me today.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back with your husband and business partner on the fitness side of things with Jamie.
Yeah, the rule of thumb is, like I always said, is like you can't out-train a poor diet. But trust me, if I could have figured that out, I'd be a billionaire right now. Because if I could figure out how to eat burgers and still, maintain a six-pack, I would have achieved that by now.
Right.
But yeah, you have to fuel the body, and then you have to take a look at the individual within itself. I always talk about nutrition, all the different diet types that are out there. It's almost like Batman's tool belt. Like, what tool am I going to use at that time? So like right now during the holiday season, like using carnivore, intermittent fasting, or even like a 48-hour fast or keto is really good, because you already know that you're going to be taking on a higher carb intake and a higher sugar content than normal. So you can kind of get those blood sugars down and control your A1C a little bit better with that.
So you're preemptively striking, like.
Correct.
Yeah, and that's funny that you mentioned that, because I actually had set out to today start my fasting going into Christmas Day.
Right. But then when you look at working out, this is where I fix a lot of people, because I'm kind of like the result guy that you've tried everything and you've gotten some progress, but you never achieved what you really want to be at. So like we always take an approach of, we always start with a low inflammatory diet and a combination of elimination diet. But when you're looking at an individual, what I find is like someone's doing keto, and I found this really big when I was working with a bunch of CrossFit facilities doing their nutrition, is the CrossFitters were always wanting to do keto. But their pathway of energy was needed to be through glycogen. So because they're doing high intensity training.
Meaning that they're going to be burning fat and muscle because they're not
so they're burning
properly to do what they're doing.
Right. So since they're not giving their body glycogen through carbs, the body's then using muscle glycogen to get through the workout. So they have this kind of flat, depleted look to them, and they kind of lose strength. So like when you're
following, like the thin skin and that kind of stuff.
No, just like your muscle bellies look flat and shrunk. Oh, like you're not even tight. You just like that, almost like that term skinny fat.
Yeah,
kind of look like that.
I use that a lot.
Right. And the big thing with it is like when you're looking at keto, you got to remember protein synthesis over to from glucogen to glucose is a longer pathway and a harder pathway, and so is fat. It's a longer energy source. That's why the body wants that immediate need of the glycogen. So when that pathway is too long, you're going to use muscle glycogen, kind of get that flat look, and that's why they end up kind of being depleted. And if you actually follow all of the top CrossFitters in the world, none of them are doing keto. So when you look at clients and you're going and they're not achieving their results, literally the wrong diet choice they could be doing is the reason why they're not optimizing their results in the gym. Yeah. So, and always, I would say 99% of the time, nobody's eating enough. Like they're always,
because even when you're shredding, you're working out, you've got to feed the right things, right?
Right. And you take, if I just took you for an example, if I put you at a desk job and I put the other person in a construction job, even though the same types of food you would be eating, your caloric needs is going to be completely different. Your electrolyte balance is going to be different. Your water intake is going to be different because in the construction job, you're way more active, you're sweating way more. So you need to replenish all that stuff way more frequently than someone who's sitting at a desk job. Exact same person. Then you can take you as an example, and let's say you're pre-diabetic, and then let's say another version of you has an autoimmune. So all that plays a factor in what is the right diet choice for you to go. And then of course, as we go through the year, the one thing that never changes is you always have birthdays, holidays, date nights, guys' night. I just had a bad day and I want a pizza night, So you need to learn how to support your system, or what I always try to teach people is put your body into a place to handle the stress. It's like if your day-to-day stress, if you let it build, throughout the day, because you're not managing it either through journaling or self-care or however you're working out, however you take care of yourself, if you let that stress build throughout the day, then what happens when big stress comes in? That's when you flip out. That's when you
the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah, you completely overreact. You're flipping out and just acting unrealistic. Towards if you manage that stress, then when something big comes in, you can handle it. You can think through it critically. You can make smart decisions instead of rational decisions and everything else. The body's the same way. If you keep putting food into it that is aggravating the gut, then when you do want to have that cheat meal because of whatever reason it is, that's when the boil over in the stomach happens. That's when you have the bloat, the gas, the constipation, you're breaking out, and you're down-regulating hormones. I mean, it has a whole list of consequences that comes along with it.
Okay, so when I walk into the facility, I see a gym.
Right.
There's a lot more that goes into it, right?
Yeah. So Precision, we started back in 2014. Actually, Precision itself started actually back in 2012. It was just me as a trainer renting out space. And then me and Jen had the vision of combining what she did with the aesthetic side with the gym side. And when we opened up, we were just doing personal training. I was heavily into bodybuilding competitions. I was prepping about 80 to 100 people a year. And then she had basic spa stuff. And she was in nursing school at that time. But then since we've evolved, now we have the personal training floor, which is all commercial equipment. That was one thing that I was really hammered in on, because I know when I was running space as a trainer, the one thing I missed about the big box gyms was having access to all the commercial equipment. You know, I was kind of limited down just to like kettlebells, dumbbells, TRX.
I was gonna say, typically when you walk in, it's kettlebells, some mats,
right? You know, and I love
bands and ropes.
Yeah, I love the term when everybody's like, "Well, it's functional training." It's like, well, everything you do is functional. Like a squat with a dumbbell is no different than a squat with a barbell, with a squat with a kettlebell, with a squat with your body weight. It's a squat. You're just using a different piece of equipment to go through it. So that was the big thing, is I really wanted to make sure that our trainers had all access to as much commercial equipment as they did in the box gym, just without having the overflow of the regular clientele coming through for a gym membership. So we're only one-on-one training. That's it. And we do a lot of small group training because of the fact of, one, we can still individualize the session down to the person. So we use a periodization cycle. Every week is a different periodization. So like force failures, force negatives, rest pause, circuits, German volume. We do everything to incorporate slow twitch and fast twitch muscle training. That way the body's balanced. So like if you want to be strong and you need to functionally lift something heavy that one time, you're capable of doing it. If you want to play with your kids, you're not blowing a hamstring out because you're so tight from lifting heavy all the time that you can't do that. So we keep it. Now, if you have a very specific goal, then we train you for that specific goal in general. But for the norm,
for a bodybuilder
if you want to run a marathon, if you're getting into powerlifting, and whatever.
I'd like to be able to dunk the ball again.
Right. So it's like we train you for that, but we have all that commercial equipment to do it on is the big thing. And like I said, it's individualized in a small group, which also builds a really good culture. Because if you're in here at the same time on Monday, Wednesdays, and Friday, kind of training with your group, then that builds kind of a friendship and an accountability.
Yeah. Because accountability buddies is what I call it.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. I'm going to have to steal it. Because it's not just me then calling you or texting you like, hey, where are you at today?
Yeah.
Your group is calling like, hey, where are you at today? You haven't been in. They're checking on you. So there's that accountability side on it.
Well, not only letting them down by not showing up, but also being there to support them, because
100%.
You have a vested interest now.
Right. And then there's friendships that are built, inside of it. They go out and they have coffee or they meet up and hang out. So the real big thing too is the fact that it's individualized. The small group training allows us to be flexible in our schedule. Like if you have an 8 o'clock schedule, but you can't make that and you can make 10, then we'll slide you into the 10 group. So we can be flexible on that side. But the biggest thing is just to really create the atmosphere and the environment for people to be comfortable with. Like we have Betsy, who is like 75 years old, came in and was really intimidated of all the equipment. Absolutely loves the equipment. We have people that started out that were 600 pounds and down to like 300 pounds that initially came in and were kind of intimidated because of their weight, but realized that nobody's judging them.
Yeah.
And actually some of those people are the hardest working people in this facility. And they actually motivate other people to train more than what they do. So
I'm always more motivated by individuals that are getting after it, right? It's no better time than now. So it's funny, the mindset of a younger me, or just anybody that's immature, which we all went through, versus elder, like, we get older and we look at somebody that is overweight,
right,
going into the gym. My mindset now, I'm sure, like you're describing, is the same as yours. Like, good for you. Like, how can I help you stay motivated?
Correct.
Like, good job getting after it. Where versus when you're a kid, you're like, oh, what are they going to do?
Right. I remember forever, my goal was just to be as big as I could.
Oh, yeah.
And now it's like, now I need to occupy less space.
Functionality.
Occupy less space and more mobility and functionality. So I can bend down and touch my toes without losing my breath or blowing a hamstring.
Or hurting your back. So this is literally like, and I feel like I'm in fairly good shape. I'm standing up there today. I look down to make sure I'm buttoning my pants properly.
Right.
Standing fully erect, straight up. Look down just like this. Just nothing out of the ordinary. My back pops real loud.
Right.
Makes it weird thing. All my muscles tighten up. I have to immediately get on my bed in a fetal position, roll my hips around to make sure I didn't paralyze myself, trying to button my damn pants up.
Right. And you're like, what happened here?
Yeah. I'm like, when did this start? And if I eat red meat like 3 days in a row, my whole functionality is different.
But yeah, it's, the personal training's there. Then we have dietitians, registered dietitians on that help the whole facility. They augment the spa side too, because, everything starts with nutrition from the end, like I had opened up with, you can't out-train a poor diet.
Yeah.
We can, you can definitely go, if you really want to be, achieve the best result as far as health, and it is 100% diet and 100% training. You know, you can't be 100% training and 50% diet. You can't be 50% diet and 100% training.
Yeah.
If you really want to get to where you want to be at. But the big thing too is you got to think about longevity, and that's why I don't like using the fad diets as a base. You know, again, like Batman's tool belt, we'll use them as we cycle through, depending upon where we need to get to with the client. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is then show the person these tools and tricks, like this is what you do after a holiday, or this is what you do after a vacation, to get yourself optimized, get your gut into a really good place to handle any poor choices you might do along the way. But really teach people like longevity, like this is how you should eat for the rest of your life.
Right.
You know, and
because helping create habits for a healthy lifestyle,
correct,
is far different than helping you through this diet,
right,
helping you achieve a bench of 250, whatever it is.
Correct. I always use money as an analogy when I talk nutrition, believe it or not.
Okay.
Because I think people understand the power of broke way more than they understand the power of being unhealthy.
Yeah.
You know, the power of broke, you feel it tomorrow.
Yeah,
you know, you overspend, you see it in your checking account. You're like, oh crap, how am I going to pay my bill? You know, car payment. The power of being unhealthy is you really don't know it because the body's always working to fix and do things so you can still do your daily activities and function throughout the day. But the rule of thumb is like, you know, 5-10 years down the road is when you really start to notice. That's when you end up getting something from the doctor saying, hey, did you know you're pre-diabetic? You know, and so it's the long game. So just like with your finances, you know, your checks really kind of go into three things. First and foremost, if I'm your financial advisor, I'm telling you XYZ 10 or 20% automatically needs to go to savings for the future. So you have something to retire on. The rest of it, then it's going to go into your hard expenses. You know, your car payment, house payment, hard bills. Whatever is left over is what your fund money is. Mm-hmm. And so I look at nutrition and kind of look at the same way. The first thing you need to be doing is making sure that you are meeting your health needs. Your body composition is something where it's at that you can sustain long term, that your blood panels look good, and overall that you have a clean bill of health. That's priority one. Priority.
Because that's my ability to have a long, healthy life.
Correct.
So longevity is
it's
the
your
first
401k.
aspect you're looking at. Got it. Cool.
Yeah, it's like your 401k.
All right.
You know, you don't dump money into a 401k so you can go celebrate your wins in a year and spend half of it.
Right.
You know, so I look at it that way. Then if you have a family, then the second priority order is time with family. And then like with the fund money is your social. So now if you don't have a family, then it's probably going to be social, then time with family. But with family, you're looking at, you know, when do I have date night with my wife or my husband? When do I have to eat pizza with my kids? Because you still need to do that stuff. Because the one thing you don't want to do is get kids so unhealthy that they're afraid of eating food. But I think they're so flip-flopped right now that they're so used to eating unhealthy that when you try to get them eating healthy, they're met with a ton of resistance.
Yeah, and that's a nature-nurture thing too. Because like, the way that my first son and I would choose meals when it was every other weekend situation was far different, because then it's like I felt the need to be like, oh, well, we're gonna have fun all the time. Everything's gotta be fun because I only get limited time. Fast forward now, my youngest son lives with me full time for the last 2.5 years. So we can't eat like that every night, right? And so he's learned, and he helps me cook. And when he preps things, he's better about it. But he started out with like Brussels sprouts is his favorite side thing, followed closely by broccoli. Right. Or we eat sweet potatoes, or he will. I mean, I don't know how many days a week we eat tacos. So he loves tacos.
Well, you can do tacos in a real healthy way.
But that's what I'm saying. And so we use ground turkey and we use peppers and everything else. So like, I mean, it's a different mindset. And I think kids are malleable enough to where if we think about ourselves like that as an adult, how are we creating these habits? And you guys help do that. So precision fitness isn't a place where I'm walking in and I'm just hitting the weights.
No.
You're not going to let me touch this stuff until we have an understanding of what's best for me long term.
Right. So you know, the initial client is going to book a 1-hour consultation.
Okay.
And within that 1-hour consultation, we're getting a medical health history. We're going over the last 6 months. What have you done? What's worked? What hasn't worked? What are your goals? More importantly, what is your why? And I dig in on that really deep, because if your why doesn't make you cry, then we haven't hit the real why. You know, because everybody's going to say, I want to look better, feel better. Of course you do. Who doesn't? Right. It's like, do you want to make more money? Of course you do. Yeah. Who doesn't want to make more money? But what are you willing to do to get to the next level? If you want to go from 100 grand and come to 200 grand, there's some sacrifice and pain points that need to be met to do that. If you're not willing to do it, then you're not going to achieve it.
Yeah.
If you want to go from this composition to this composition, there's going to be some pain points, and there's going to be some sacrifice that goes along the way to get there. That doesn't mean that it's permanent. Like I always tell people when they start out with their program with it, nutrition and training, is like, you are broke right now. I need you to eat as if you're broke. You can only afford what is on that plan that we're going to give you for the next 2 weeks. We bring you back in, we measure you, figure out what's working, what's not working, and then we readjust your plan based on the symptoms. And then, is there an increase in hunger? Is the hunger the same? Has it been too much food? Of course, the one big always thing that comes in is variety. Mm-hmm. And as I think we can honestly say and be truthful with each other, like, you've had enough variety in your life up until this point to where you can cut some variety out to get to where you want to be at. And if you don't, then I know that we have not hit the strong enough why at that point.
Yeah, that makes sense. And variety doesn't, I think the thing that people miss, or at least something that I'll speak on my behalf, because I'm not a mental health expert by any means, or a nutritionist. There's a lot of different things I can do with chicken. People are always like, oh, how many times can I eat chicken and broccoli or chicken and rice? Well, there's a lot of flavors you can add to chicken. Right. So in my purview, what I've learned is, like, I have a lot of different types of dishes between ground turkey, chicken, and red meat. Right. I eat a lot of red meat too. And prior to that, I never thought in that process. I was very narrow-minded because I didn't have somebody like you to show me the way. And I think a lot of people are like that when I see things on social media, food prepping, blah, blah. And it's literally just like bland chicken, white rice, and broccoli. And it's like, well, no wonder you're not having fun with it, because this isn't a sustainable lifestyle.
No.
This is a fad.
And it's like, I always push back on people. I'm like, what's your favorite restaurant? And they'll tell me, I'm like, do you get the same thing every single time, or do you order something different every time you go there?
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I get the same thing. I'm like, yeah, you get two. Yeah, probably two of your favorite at most.
Yeah.
3 is going to be the extreme. But that's why you go to different places. Mm-hmm. Like, you have your favorite Italian place, you have your favorite Mexican place, you have your favorite steak place. But you're going there and you're basically getting the same thing every
I don't even look
single
at the
time.
menu at First Watch.
Capitol Grill knows exactly. Everybody there knows exactly what I ordered.
Yeah.
I don't even have to tell them. They just, here you go.
Yep.
So it's like, that's where you come down with the base. We try to find at least 2 to 3 to 4 main meals that you can cycle through on a weekly basis. Mm-hmm. And then the rest of it, the variety comes in, like we were talking about, birthdays, holidays. You just want to have a night where you just don't want to have that, you'd make it. But the biggest thing always comes back to it is your gut health in a place to take it. Have you been following everything to a point to where you're digesting food the way you need to? Are you going to the bathroom every single day? Is everything digesting in a way that means yes? Then that means you can handle like a free meal, if you want to call it that. If you're having gut issues and do anything, it's like having all that stress. The last thing you need is some big coming in. So it's not worth it at that point to then tackle with like a cheeseburger or pizza, because you're just going to cause more trouble within the gut.
So if individuals out there who are listening or watching have had issues or run-ins in the past where it's just not working, or this isn't that, there's a reason why you probably charge a little more than a Club Fitness, and that's because it sounds like, and from what you're describing, and I'm sure people who come here realize this, you're not trying to help people lose weight. You're trying to help people live a happy, healthy, sustainable life through longevity, knowledge that you have, and you're not just letting people come in. Probably the best way to look at it from an outsider's perspective, what I would say is precision is quality over quantity.
I would always say, like, everything that we do is to the individual specifically with precision. Like I said, it's like, you might not be able to do back squats, so we just find a different exercise. It doesn't mean we take you away from the German volume training that week. We just put you in an exercise, replace that exercise with something that you can do versus something that's going to wreak more havoc on the body than not. So that's always kind of the big thing with it, is we customize everything to the individual on that side. Excellent. And where can people find you guys if they're looking to change their life for the better? So we have our website at precisionlife.io. My IG is at the Jamie Spicer. On TikTok, it's the same for as long as we have it, until the 19th of the year. I wonder if that'll go through though. We were supposed to have real IDs to travel years and years ago, and it's still like, next May. May. It's just like, it is what it is. But and that's the biggest thing, like with the company in itself, is like, I've been an advocate and a voice speaking out against big pharma and mainstream nutrition for quite a long time. It's, for me, the first line of defense is exercise and diet, not prescription medications. I'm not saying that prescription medications aren't needed.
Sure.
But I don't think it's the first line of defense.
Yeah.
I think, perfect example, I just had this come up with a client. They came in and said that they were pre-diabetic and need to get on metformin right away. And I'm like, well, what tests did they run? Like, well, they checked my blood sugar right there. I'm like, so you're pre-diabetic because they checked your blood sugar at 11 o'clock in the morning. One time. I'm like, did they ask you what you ate?
Right.
And they're like, nope. I'm like, how do they know you didn't have ice cream before you went in there? It's
like the day after Halloween.
Yeah. It's just like, so it's like, the one in big pharma and mainstream is doctors and nutrition is everything's written by big pharma. So the medication's the route, but it's really disappointing to know that they're not doing the proper testing to get the full clinical picture from the get-go. That's even what we see relevant. Well, I say what really differentiates precision medicine that we do here versus any other places that we look at it from first you have to fix the gut, then you have to fix the adrenals, then you have to work on the thyroid, then you can address the hormones first and last. Because if everything's being downregulated hormonally because of poor nutrition, lack of exercise, then is it really a hormone issue, or is it other issues that are causing it?
Right.
And I understand that some people will say, well, you got to get the hormone levels up first so they feel better, and then that gets them going. It's like, yeah, you can do the same thing by getting up and moving, and working out. Like, right. You don't need a testosterone shot to justify getting out of bed to go work out. Like, your testosterone will naturally rise just because you're working out and doing cardio.
Yeah, your body knows. We need
Correct.
to pump more in this.
Yeah, so that's always the big part with that. We have our podcast, Younger by the Minute. That's where me and Jen really go under. That's where she's like the brains and I'm the dumb it down guy for you. She talks on a very medical level and I bring it down where people can maybe relate a little bit more, but then I can also talk a lot more off-label about hormones, nutrition, and peptides more than she can because she's more on the medical level than I am.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, I appreciate you so much for taking the time to meet with us today and hang out and tell all of our listeners and followers a little bit more about precision. And if you're looking to change your life for the better and not just get in the gym, this is a perfect time to do it. We got a lot of New Year's resolutions.
Yeah.
And I think that I certainly would back you guys in what you do here, just from what I've learned. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me on here. It was a pleasure.
All right. Appreciate it.